I'm going to show you how I sew quarter circle blocks. You will start with your square and your cutout template. You'll need a marking pen, and here I'm using a chalk pen. And I'm going to line up the straight edges of the template with the straight edges of my square. I usually like to cut my squares a little bit bigger just to give me a little extra room to work with. So as you can see, the template is lined up with my fabric, and I'm going to mark on the edge of the template. You can print your templates on paper, or you can print them on cardstock, or you can even trace them on template plastic. For my background fabric, I'm using a rectangle because I'm going to fit 2 templates on this, and I'm going to use a friction pen. It's a little bit darker and it's supposed to be heat erasable. And I'm going to do the same thing, line up the straight edges of the template with the straight edges of my fabric. And I'm just going to trace as well as I can. I printed on paper, so it's a little bit flimsy, but it'll work just fine. I like to mark the edges first and then slowly mark my curved line. When I mark this part of the template, I always slip and mark on the paper, and that's okay because I don't keep these papers. And one template is done, I'm turning it around and I'm going to include another one. The quilt I'm making actually uses more quarter circle blocks, so this is why I'm drawing 2 background fabrics onto the same rectangle. But if for you to make just one, you only need 1 template for the background. So I'm tracing the second one, and then on the middle, we're just going to have an orange peel after we cut it out to use for later. This is what they look like once they have been cut. And next we're going to go to piecing. When you're piecing, you want to find the center of both of your pieces. So I'm just folding this on the straight edges, marking the center of the circle on one piece, and I'm getting the background fabric as well and doing the exact same thing. Some people like to use glue instead of pins. I just use pins because I feel like it takes less time for me. And as you can see, the centers are marked. Flip your background over, lay it on top, and if you have those little lines marked, they should be matching. Take a pin into that section, and then it's time to pin the edges. Use the short edge of the background fabric and match it with the straight edge of your main fabric, and put a pin in it and try to match it as close as you can to those lines. Make those lines overlap, and your fabric is just going to look all crazy right now, but that's okay. Remember, when you're cutting in this circle, you're cutting it on the bias, which means on the stretchy side of the fabric, and that actually helps when you're sewing circles. So I have pinned my center and I have pinned the edges, and this is what it should look like. As you can see, the fabric is all wrinkled up. So what I'm going to do now is just grab it between those pins and gently tug on it so that I can stretch that background fabric so that the side of it lines up with the side on the main fabric. Once you are happy with how your fabrics line up with each other, there are no gaps or wrinkles, then you can start putting pins in between the other pins. You're gently maneuvering the fabric, manipulating it until it pins correctly. So I did half of it, and now I'm going to do the same with the other half, gently tugging on to that background fabric and the main fabric. Not too much because it'll fray. And I'm going to put, once they're lined up, I'm going to put a pin exactly in between the 2 pins that exist already, and I'm going to repeat that process. If you're really worried about your first time sewing curves, then you can fold your fabric in half like you did the first time, and then grab the edge and fold it towards the small center fold that you have made. Just finger press that just to make a mark, and repeat on the other side. So this helps us line up the main fabric with the background fabric a little bit better. So I'm going to take my background, mark the center just like I did in the previous step, and I'm going to grab the edge, bring it towards the center, finger press it, grab the other edge, bring it towards the center, finger press it. And then it's going to be even easier to match those seams. Pin the edges like you did on the other side, on the previous step. Same thing, and then repeat on the other side. And what makes this method even easier is once you have these 3 points attached together, then you're getting those extra centers that you have created in between the 2 pins, and you match those as well. Once you have those marks pinned, gently tug like we did before, but this time it's going to be a little easier because our seams are just magically going to match our edges of the fabrics. So once you get to the sewing machine, I like to use an owl to help me direct. I put a couple of stitches at the end, and then I will take my pin out and then gently keep the owl down on top of the fabric so it doesn't shift. Slowly go towards the pin. Do not sew over your pins unless you like to. I'm a little bit scared of doing so. Just keep sewing until you get to the next pin at a 1/4 inch apart. Pull your pins as you go. I have broken my sewing machine needles sewing over pins, and I have bent pins and inserted them into the bed of my machine. When I get to the end of my block, I like to slow down and really pay attention because my background fabric is going to tend to move. So I'm going to go slowly, hold it with the owl, and then gently guide it under the machine. Make sure you don't sew over your tool, and your curved block is done. Next, we're going to go press it. Once we get to pressing the block, what I like to do is to press my main fabric a little bit and gently run my iron over that seam, and then I will flip it over. I need to press to the dark side, and I'll do the same. Gently push away at that seam, and then once the fabric is warm and soft, I'm holding onto the main fabric. I'm not pulling too hard on it, but I want to make sure it does not distort, and I'm gently pressing down onto that seam towards the dark. It's a lot easier pressing it to the light side, to the background, but for this reason I don't want it to show through my white fabric. And then I flip it over, and I don't iron, I just press down on that seam. I don't use steam if I need a little bit of mist of water, but I don't like to use steam in this case. I really like my wool mat. Thank you for watching, and let me know if you have any questions in the comment section.